Welcome to our channel. Today, we dive into the inspiring life and legacy of Eva Perón, a powerful voice for the people, an icon of passion and resilience, and one of the most influential women in history. Join us as we explore her story, her impact, and why she continues to captivate hearts around the world. Let's get started. I don't know how to begin this without sounding like I'm narrating a telenovela, but maybe that's exactly what my life turned into. For context, I'm Eva, yes, that Eva, Argentina's First Lady. And before you roll your eyes, no, this isn't about politics. This is about a marriage that felt like it belonged in a history book, but behind closed doors, it was a chapter I'd rather erase. When I married Juan, I thought we were unstoppable. I was a radio actress, ambitious, poor but sharp, and he was climbing the military and political ranks like a man chasing something he was too afraid to name. Together, we were passion and power wrapped up in silk speeches and roaring applause. People called us a dream. They didn't hear the whispers behind the curtain. The first sign something was off came after our trip to Europe, what they dubbed the Rainbow Tour. The crowds cheered, but when we got back to Buenos Aires, I noticed one started locking his office, and his phone, and his damn diary. I'm not proud of it, but I started checking pockets and coat linings like some paranoid maid. And then came the perfume. Not mine. A scent too sweet, like strawberries dipped in lice. I brought it up, casually. Did someone hug you today? And he gave that tight-lipped smile I hated. The one that said, I know you know, but I'm pretending I don't. That's when the velvet lie began. A slow unraveling, not with a bang, but a murmur. I told myself it was stress. Politics. His advisors filling his head with garbage. But deep down, I knew. You can't sleep next to a man every night and not feel when he starts drifting toward another body. And the worst part? I let myself believe the fairy tale a little longer. I was Eva Perón, adored by millions, but I was lying to myself more than he ever could. So here's where things stopped being subtle. One had always been careful. The kind of man who didn't leave receipts unless he wanted you to find them. But that morning, I swear to you, fate was tired of watching me play dumb. It was around 6 a.m., and he'd already left for some urgent meeting with the Minister of Labor. I stayed behind because I wasn't feeling well. I'd later find out it wasn't stress, it was cancer, but let's shelve that for now. I decided to go through his briefcase. Don't judge me. We all hit that point eventually. I thought maybe I'd find memos or something political. Instead, I found a small envelope. Pink. Smelled like the perfume from his jacket. Inside was a folded note that said, Last night was incredible. I'm still sore winking-faced. You said we had to be discreet, but I dreamed of you all night. Yours, M. M. Who the hell was M? I read that note 4 times, hoping I'd hallucinated it. I didn't cry, not yet. I just felt that cold, crawling flush down the back of my neck. You know the one, where your body realizes something before your heart can catch up. And like an idiot, I Googled names of every female member of our staff, starting with M. I even considered Maria Eva Duarte, my own name. That's how crazy betrayal makes you. For a second I thought maybe it was a code, like I was the mistress and didn't even know it. Later that night, I saw him, calm, smug, smelling of that perfume again, and I thought, he doesn't even care that I found it. Worse, I think he wanted me to die. I didn't go for the dramatic reveal right away. I played it smart. I waited until we were alone, no cameras, no press, no adoring masses chanting Evita. Just me and him, in the study, with the pink envelope burning a hole through my bathrobe pocket. Who's M? I asked. He didn't even flinch. Just kept reading some speech draft like I'd asked him what he wanted for lunch. I don't know what you're talking about. That was the moment I knew it wasn't the first letter. Probably not even the 5th. He was practiced. Bored even. Like this wasn't new. So I tossed the envelope on the desk. Watched it land like a grenade. He sighed, as if I were the one exhausting him. You shouldn't go through my things, Eva. Oh, I shouldn't? I'm the one sleeping next to you while you're screwing strawberry shortcake on the side, and I'm the one out of line? I pushed the issue. Asked if it was one of the secretaries. One of the actors from the propaganda film unit. Maybe even someone in the opposition that would have at least made it strategic. And he said, I swear to God he said this, it's nothing serious. She knows her place. Knows her place. As if I didn't. He tried to turn it on me after that. Said I'd been distant. Said I was too focused on the poor, as if helping millions of suffering people was a betrayal. Said I made everything about image. Imagine that. Juan Perón accusing me of caring too much about image. By the end of it, I wasn't even angry. I was stunned. I remember thinking, he doesn't even love her. He just loves that I can't leave. And he was right. At that moment, I couldn't. But something broke loose in me that night, something cold and sharp that never quite went back where it belonged. I didn't scream. I didn't cry in front of him. I just left the study like I'd forgotten something on the stove, calm, composed, even nodded at the guards on the way out. It wasn't until I got to the dressing room and locked the door that I sat down and realized I'm married to a stranger who knows exactly how to hurt me and doesn't care if he does. Shock comes first. It's quiet. You think maybe you misunderstood everything. Maybe the note was innocent. Maybe M stands for minister or some other nonsense your heart scrambles to invent. But deep down, you know. Then the anger comes in waves. Stupid things start to matter. The fact that I gave up my acting career, that I vouched for him publicly when he barely looked me in the eyes at home, that I carried him into power, and he repays me with some woman who knows her place. I threw up. More than once. I couldn't eat for days. My assistant noticed but didn't say anything. I think they knew or guessed and didn't want to be the one to tell me what I already knew. Worst of all, I started questioning myself. Was I too ambitious? Did I emasculate him? Was I too cold in bed? Too busy being a saint of the poor to be his little housewife? God, that thought made me sick. I've led workers' strikes. I've sat with dying children. I've given speeches to men who wanted me to fail, and still, I let one man make me feel like I was the problem. There's something uniquely cruel about betrayal when it comes from someone who once looked at you like you were everything. Because now, every tender memory feels staged. Every compliment feels strategic. Every, I love you, echoes like a punchline. I wasn't heartbroken. I was humiliated. And yet, I still wore the ring. After that, everything changed, not publicly, of course. In public, I still smiled like the Virgin Mary on parade. But inside, I was rotting. I started having these weird moments. I'd be in the middle of giving a speech to the descamisados, the shirtless ones, the working poor, and suddenly, my vision would blur. Not from tears. Just fog. Like I was floating above my own body, watching a woman pretend to be herself. I'd come home and just sit in the dark. Sometimes I wouldn't even take off my heels, just curl up in that stupid velvet chair in the corner of the bedroom and stare at the curtains. One would come in late. Never said where he'd been. Never needed to. His silence was a confession on its own. And here's where it gets messy. I started checking on him. I'm not proud of it, but I had a driver follow his car once. Then twice. The third time, he caught on it. Fired the driver and told me, don't turn into the kind of woman people pity. I laughed. Pity? The world worshipped me. Little girls named their dolls after me. But in that moment, I felt smaller than I ever had as an orphan sleeping on a straw mat in Los Toldos. I stopped trusting anyone. I thought maybe everyone knew. Maybe the generals whispered about it behind closed doors. Maybe the maids were laughing behind my back. Maybe this whole marriage was a PR stunt from the beginning. I was just the shiny bottle he needed to sell his message. So what did I do? I smiled harder, gave more speeches, hugged more children, donated more of my own money to hospitals and schools. I doubled down on the image, because if I couldn't control the man I loved, I'd control every damn thing else. But in the mirror, I started looking like a ghost. And then I made a decision that would change everything. It happened on a Sunday. The house was quiet, and for once, one wasn't at a meeting. He was out on the terrace, pretending to read a military report, and I was pacing. I hadn't slept the night before. My stomach was twisting. Something in me said, today's the day. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I went through his personal secretary's drawer. The one marked private correspondence. I know, low move. But I was already knee-deep in hell. Might as well dig deeper. That's when I found it. A photograph. Not a scandalous one, not even overly romantic, but intimate in a way that made my chest seize up. It was Juan, arms around a woman with deep red lipstick, laughing like he hadn't done with me in years. And her hand was tucked under his jacket, right at his heart like it belonged there. The back of the photo said, Mi sol eterno, M. I flipped. I stormed onto the terrace and threw the picture on his lap. This her? Is this him? He didn't even look up right away. Just folded the photo back up like it was a grocery list. Then he muttered, I told you not to go through my things. That's when I lost it. I shouted. I told him I wasn't his doll. I wasn't some peasant he could keep quiet with flowers and fake apologies. I was Eva Duarte, the woman who built his presidency. I told him I'd find her, and when I did, I'd make her wish she'd stayed anonymous. And then, get this, he smirked. Actually smirked. And said, "You've already met her. She sang at the fundraiser last month. Remember? You said she looked a little cheap for opera." I nearly collapsed. I remembered her. Brunette. Barely 22. Shaky hands, red nails, nervous laugh. I even told her she did a good job, not knowing she'd been in my husband's bed the night before. I felt like a fool. A character in some cheap radio soap. But worse? I suddenly realized he wanted me to find her. He wanted control. And I was going to take it back. After that little reveal on the terrace, something inside me snapped, but not in the way you probably expected. I didn't cry. I didn't scream again. I just smiled. The same way I do in public when I'm surrounded by people I hate. He thought he'd humiliated me. But what he did was give me clarity. I went back inside, locked the door, poured myself a glass of Malbec, and I made a list. I mean a real one. Pen and paper. Everything he'd ever done to undercut me. Every time he ignored my suggestions. Every time he called me hysterical behind closed doors. Every woman he'd brought into the periphery of our lives and pretended I was imagining. Then, I made a second list. People who owed me favors. Editors. Union bosses. Generals who liked me more than they liked him. I had built this empire brick by brick in heels, and he had the audacity to treat me like a side character in his little military drama? No, absolutely not. I reached out to the president of a women's organization, the same one thought was just a vanity project of mine. I asked for their loyalty. Told them I might need them soon. The way her face changed? I knew she already knew. Women always know. And she said, "Whenever you're ready, Evita." I started crafting public appearances that made me the heroine and him the background noise. I started slipping quotes into speeches that hinted at betrayal and rebirth. The woman who rises from ashes is stronger than the one who never burned. I sent one of my staff to speak to M's landlord under the pretense of arranging a charity donation. Turns out, the girl wasn't just seeing one. She had a child. A toddler. Hair just like his. I almost fainted. I didn't tell him I knew. Not yet. That card needed to be played at the perfect moment. I didn't know who to trust. Everyone in the palace had ears and mouths that whispered directly to Juan. But there was one man who'd always been a shadow behind the curtain, the kind of dangerous that doesn't wear a uniform. General Anibal. Retired, technically. Wealthy. Vicious. And quiet. I invited him for tea. We hadn't spoken since the campaign days, but I knew his weakness, resentment. He hated how Juan had sidelined him. Hated the way my husband spoke in slogans and surrounded himself with yes-men. We met in the garden, both of us too proud to mention the armed guards watching from the hedges. I poured the tea, looked him straight in the eye. "I'm going to need protection, discretion, and a little disruption." He didn't flinch. Just said, "And what do I get in return?" I said, "A shot at the presidency. Not for you, you're too toxic. But someone you trust. Someone I can work with. Someone who doesn't cheat on his wife with a child opera singer." He blinked. Once. Then laughed, and not politely. Deep, belly laugh. "You always were the more dangerous Perón." From that moment, it was done. Anibal promised me access to private intelligence files, including movements of M and her child, which one had secretly arranged protection for. He also offered me something better, a journalist. A loyal one. Someone who could publish exactly the right kind of scandal if, and when I gave the green light. I didn't want revenge. I wanted leverage. Leverage that would make my husband sit across from me at the breakfast table and know that I knew everything, and that I could turn the public against him in a heartbeat. But then something unexpected happened. Someone tried to poison me. I'm not being dramatic. I collapsed 3 hours after a state dinner. Vomiting, shaking, heart racing. Doctors said it was exhaustion. Anibal said, "It wasn't the food. It was the tea. The one your maid brought you after the dinner. The same maid one hired last month." He looked me in the eye. "You're not just playing politics anymore, Eva. You're at war." And that's when I realized I wasn't scared. I was ready. So yeah, I nearly died. Someone slipped something in my tea, and nobody in that house seemed surprised. That was the scariest part. Not the nausea, not the shaking, but the fact that the people who claimed to serve me didn't even pretend to be shocked when I collapsed. I fired the maid. Publicly. Coldly. No tears. Juan said nothing. He didn't even ask what was wrong. He looked over the rim of his coffee like I was interrupting his morning. That's when I knew. He thought he'd won. He thought I was broken. Done. Out of moves. So I smiled and went back to work. I threw a fundraiser for a children's hospital in Cordoba. Invited every power player I could think of, governors, generals' wives, foreign diplomats. I gave a speech about hope, about sacrifice, about family. And I made sure Em was there. I knew she'd come. She still craved the attention, and Juan couldn't help himself. He probably told her it was safe. Probably told her I'd be too busy playing queen to notice her. But I didn't just notice her. I had the journalist, the one General any bull gave me, take photos. Dozens. One in particular. Em and Juan, standing just a little too close by the buffet table. His hand on her lower back. Her son, the boy with his eyes, clinging to her leg. I waited 2 days. Then I had it published anonymously. Front page of a tabloid with just enough truth to get tongues wagging, and just enough vagueness to avoid outright war. Yet. Headline read: The President's Second Family? Rumors swirl after fundraiser photos surface. One lost his mind. He barged into my room, waving the paper like I hadn't already read it 10 times. What the hell is this, Eva? I didn't look up from my mirror. Looks like someone's been a busy boy. He threw the paper on the vanity. It slid off like garbage. You crossed a line. I finally turned to him. Calm, measured. So did you, when you brought her into my home. When you made me talk to her. Compliment her singing while your fingerprints were still on her thighs. He looked stunned. Then angry. Then scared. Good. Because now he knew. I wasn't cornered. I was coiled. After the tabloid exploded, Juan tried to get ahead of it. He gave a lukewarm press statement about respecting all families and private lives being off limits. It was the kind of vague nonsense that usually worked. But not this time. Because I made sure the next wave of headlines didn't come from gossip rags. They came from me. I gave an exclusive interview framed as a heartfelt message to the women of Argentina. And in it, I talked about loyalty. About how sometimes, even those closest to us wear masks. I never named him. I didn't have to. The public knew. They saw the subtext. They remembered the fundraiser photos. The way one looked nervous at press briefings. They were already whispering, is Evita leaving him? But that wasn't the goal. Not yet. My real move came 2 days later. I filed an official motion through my foundation to transfer certain state welfare programs under my personal management. Quietly, surgically. One didn't notice until the ink was dry. By then, I controlled the money. The optics were clear. I was the generous one, the mother of the nation. He was the aging husband who'd been caught with his pants down literally. He confronted me in the hallway. No guards. Just us. You think you've won. I didn't smile. I didn't blink. No, Juan. I know I've won. And the difference between us is, I still care what happens next. You? You care what they think. I care about what I'll leave behind. He looked older that day. Smaller. Like a man trying to remember what power felt like. And then, for the first time in our marriage, he apologized. A real one. No excuses. No shifting the blame. Just, I'm sorry. But it was too late. Not because I hated him. I didn't. That was the worst part. I still remembered the version of him I fell for. The soldier with fire in his eyes. But that man had disappeared, piece by piece, behind ambition and deception. And now? Now I was the one with fire in her eyes. After Juan's apology, I thought maybe, just maybe, we could salvage something. Not the fairy tale everyone dreamed of, but a partnership built on something real. But the man I loved was gone. Replaced by someone fragile and dangerous in his own way. He started making mistakes. Public gaffes, outbursts during speeches, slipping up in interviews. The press sniffed blood. Rumors flew faster than I could silence them. One evening, I found him in his office, staring blankly at a telegram. His hands trembled, a sign I hadn't seen before. The telegram was from the military high command. They were questioning his leadership, whispering about replacing him. His allies were turning. I wanted to help, but he pushed me away. This is your war, Eva. Not mine. I felt every inch of betrayal, even though I was the one who had led this fight. He drank more, shut himself away, and then the most gut-wrenching thing happened. The woman, Em, started to appear publicly, her son on her hip, whispered Question. People saw the headlines, the speeches, the public drama. But what they didn't see was the quiet war behind closed doors. Late at night, I sat alone in the presidential residence, the weight of the nation heavy on my shoulders. The betrayal, the lies, the public spectacle, it was all a mask covering a deeper truth. One was sick, not just with the stress or guilt, but something darker. The pressures of power, the loneliness of command, and the poison of his choices were eating him alive. I visited him one evening, finding him staring out the window, eyes hollow. "Eva," he whispered, "I don't know who I am anymore." And in that moment, my anger softened into something else, pity, maybe, or sorrow. But I couldn't let that stop me. Argentina needed a leader who was strong, who cared, not just for politics, but for the people. And I was ready to step up. The next morning, I began preparing my most important speech yet, one that would redefine me. Not as a betrayed wife, but as a champion for the forgotten. The public didn't know it yet, but the real battle was just beginning. The day of the speech arrived like a storm rolling over Buenos Aires, thick clouds, restless energy in the air, and a crowd that buzzed with anticipation. I stood behind the curtain, heart pounding, not from fear, but from the knowledge that everything would change after this moment. When I stepped onto the stage, the cameras fixed on me, the murmurs hushed, and all eyes focused. I didn't speak about Juan. I didn't mention the betrayal or the scandal. Instead, I spoke about the women, the workers, the forgotten masses who'd built this country with their bare hands and still struggled to eat. I spoke about dignity, about hope, about a future where no child went hungry and no woman was silenced. And then, softly but firmly, I said, "I am not just a wife, not just a mother. I am the voice of Argentina's soul, and I will not be silenced." The crowd erupted. The press scrambled. The government trembled. That speech wasn't just words. It was a declaration of power, of survival, of rebirth. Behind the scenes, I saw Juan's expression on the televised feed, a mixture of defeat, disbelief, and maybe, just maybe, respect. That night, as the city lights shimmered beneath my window, I realized the truth. The betrayal had broken us both. But from the shards, I was building something new, something unstoppable. The speech changed everything, but it didn't erase the past. The tabloids kept spinning stories, some praising me as a champion of the people, others tearing me apart as a scheming wife who destroyed her marriage for power. Juan withdrew even further into himself, a ghost haunting the halls of a palace that no longer felt like home to either of us. I heard whispers that he was considering stepping down altogether, but in his pride, he never said it aloud. Our conversations became sparse and cold, a stark contrast to the fiery debates we once had. When we did speak, it was about duty, about appearances, never about us. But something unexpected happened. The people began to rally behind me, not because I was a perfect wife or a flawless leader, but because I was real. I was a woman who had been betrayed, hurt, and yet refused to be broken. Friends and strangers alike reached out, sharing their own stories of betrayal, resilience, and hope. I realized that my personal pain had become a beacon for others, a reminder that even in darkness, you could find strength. And as for Juan, our paths had irrevocably diverged. I loved him once, but now I loved Argentina more. Looking back, the betrayal wasn't just about Juan cheating or lying. It was about trust shattered and identities challenged. I was a wife, yes, but I was also a woman with a mission. Here's what I learned. Don't let betrayal define you. It's easy to get lost in anger or sadness, but that only gives the betrayer power over your story. Own your strength. Sometimes, the hardest battles are the ones you fight within yourself. Use your pain to fuel your purpose. I turned my heartbreak into action, into something bigger than me. That's what kept me going. Forgiveness isn't weakness. I never forgot what happened, but I chose to forgive not for him, but for my own peace. Know your worth and demand respect. Whether in marriage or politics, respect is the foundation. If you're dealing with betrayal, remember, you are more than what's been done to you. You have the power to write your own story, and sometimes, that story is the greatest revenge of all. Stay strong. Eva.